Hello there, it's Michelle from CNC Designs. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in New Zealand, and Happy New Year to everyone. Welcome to another Global Monthly Video Hop. The theme for January is Fun Fold or Fancy Fold. And because there's a brand new catalog, the mini catalog from January-June has come out from Stampin' Up! As well as we're having Sale-A-Bration from January 4th to February 28th. So I'm going to show you some new products with my card today, and you can get lots of other inspiration for this type of folding for your cards by clicking the links in the description below my video. It will take you to all the other demonstrators around the world that are participating in this month's Global Monthly Video Hop. And you might see some new people this time around because our group is growing, so we've got more people that you can get inspiration from. So for the card that I'm doing, I'm using a couple products that you can only get for free if you purchase a certain amount of products, depending on what country you're in, and they're in our Sale-A-Bration brochure. So in the middle of the brochure, we have some fabulous products. We've got the Simply Marbleous. They're trying to do the use the word marble in there. Marbleous designer series paper. So we've got that beautiful paper I'm going to use. Let's see if you can see it. There we go. So that one has paper. It has 48 sheets of paper. It's 6 by 6 inches, and it has various colors. So I've already done one sample card in the Coastal Cabana, and then I'm going to show you how to do the same in the Balmy Blue. And then I'm going to be using the beautiful Awesome Otters in my set because this paper lends itself to looking like water. And so if you like those, talk to your demonstrator, and if you purchase the qualifying amount, you can get those products free. If you are in New Zealand, don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, feel free to contact me. My website is michellekritchley.stampinup.net, and you can order directly there or find my contact details if you want to get in touch to order things or come to classes or learn more. I also do a blog, papercraftaddiction.blogspot.co.nz. So let me show you what we're going to do today. So as I already mentioned, we're going to be using the Awesome Otters stamp set, and we're going to be using papers from the Marbleous DSP, Designer Series paper. So the paper comes, one side looks kind of like marble and the other almost looks like a water look. So there's, I think, 6 different colors there. And this is the card I'm going to show you. So we've got a beautiful otter there, and then when you pull the tab, it slides up with your fun fold, showing you an otter at the top. It says, "You are utterly awesome," and then the little otter pops out of the water below. And then you can slide it back down and open it up to put your message. Now the otters on this one, my sample one, I colored with the pencils, but today I'm going to do it with the Stampin' Blends. So I'm going to do it slightly different, but the measurements will be the same. So the inside piece I will be using the fluid watercolor paper, because if you don't, the blends will bleed through the paper and you'll see it on the other side. And normally you would just color it straight on to the other side of your inside white cardstock, but you can see there are some lines there where I pressed fairly hard when I was coloring as well. So the version I'm going to do today will solve those issues, and you might want to do that, especially if you want to do any watercoloring of the otters. So let's get started. So what you need is you need your base card. So here in New Zealand we have A4 cards stock, and we cut it in half, and so this is 21 centimeters, and then we score it at 10.5 centimeters and cut our A4 in half. So this side is 14.8 or 8.5 centimeters, and that gives you your card base. So start with a basic white card base, and then you need to have a background card for the front, so that needs to fit the entire front of your card. So again, whatever country you're in, cut it to fit exactly. Here in New Zealand, that would be 10.5 centimeters that way and 14.85 centimeters that direction. So it fits the entire front of your card. And then your designer series paper. So as I said, I'm using this Marbleous designer series paper. It comes in 6 by 6 inch squares, and as I said, that's there's several different colors, and the design looks different on either side. Now when you're cutting it, if it's a directional one, you just got to keep in mind how to cut it. You want it to be slightly smaller than your colored card base. So in this case, I want it to be 10 centimeters by 14.3. Now when you cut it, if like this one, certain ways will blend itself more to look like it's water, flowing. So deciding which way I want it to go. I think I like that look better. So I'm going to cut that at 10 centimeters. Now when you cut it down, if you cut the smaller measurement first, then you'll have a little piece of scrap left over, and then you can use that little scrap for the inside like I did there. So I'll cut that at 10 centimeters to start with. And again, make sure you got the direction you want the paper to go. And then that's just scrap that can be used elsewhere. Nice thing too, with 10 centimeters being 6, you end up with about 2 inches left on there. And then turn it around, and I think I want to cut a little bit off the top there. So I'll do 14.3 centimeters there and just trim that little bit. So I'll save that piece. I can pop that on the inside of the card, the base. And that's our front piece. And then you want, so that's the front, that's going to cover, and as you can see, you're going to have a little bit of edge around there, which is what you want. So the base card, you want it to be a color that might complement your designer series paper on the front. Then you want the pulley section on the inside. So this one here is 8 centimeters there, and it's 12.8 centimeters long. So you want that one for there, and then that's normally all you need. But because I'm using the Stampin' Blends, I've cut a piece of the Fluid 100 watercolor paper. And this comes in 5 by 7 inch pieces. So I've just cut one straight in half. So that's ended up being, what is that? So that's ended up being 12.7 by 9 centimeters. So I cut it at the 9 centimeters. And that's just going to be underneath where I'm going to have the otter colored in. That way you're not going to see it on the inside. So we're going to have an extra layer on this card. Okay, and then you want a piece of scrap paper, basic white thick, so you can color the otter that's going to show up on the outside and then cut it out. Because I'm using Stampin' Blends, I'm going to stamp everything with the Memento Tuxedo Black ink, because that way when I use the blends with the, which is an alcohol-based marker, it's not going to bleed. Now I've already gone and stamped my otter on the inside, ready for me to color. And we will prepare these ones and then do some stamping and coloring. So what you want to do first is you want to glue down your designer series paper onto your colored cardstock, making sure that you leave the edges. Now because it's going to be pulled up, you best adhesive to use is the liquid glue, the Tombow liquid glue, and give it good coverage. So that's the part I want the front, because you're going to cut through and you don't want it to be loose where you cut it through. So make sure you give it good coverage if your glue comes out. Hold on. Okay. This one I think is almost at the end of its life, so I might have to swap glues. Try a different one. Oh, that's better. So up to the sides and plenty of coverage in the middle because that's where we're going to cut. And you want to make sure it sticks together. Okay. And then just pop that down, center it, and just give yourself a little bit of edge around there. And then grab your bone folder and just spread it out. Okay, so that's the first part. Then you're going to need your cutter. Now, if you don't have the Stampin' Cut board, you could just measure it up with a ruler and mark it with pencils and then cut it with a blade. But this tool is just fabulous because it's so easy to use. What you want to do now that you've got that glued down is work out which way is going to be the top. I like this. I like the flow of that. I could do it that way, but that looks like it's flowing down. So I'm going to cut it this way. And what you want to do is you're going to cut sections from the top and bottom. So with Stampin' Up, the cutter comes with, the bar is in inches, but you can purchase a metric bar. So I've put the metric bar on here. Normally it comes with one that's in inches, but this one actually has metric. If you have the old cutter, it had both on there. So I put the metric one on here, and I've used washi tape to mark where I want to cut. So you want to cut from 2 centimeters to 12.8 centimeters. So I'm not sure if you can see that very well. There we go. So I put the washi tape right at the 12.8 there and right at the 2 centimeters there because I'm going to do 2 cuts. Now if you're going to do lots of them, it's another good idea to do that because then you can don't have to keep looking closely to where it's going to be. So the first thing you want to do is you want to line this up at 8.5 centimeters. So line one edge at 8.5 centimeters. And then move your blade. I'll show up close as well. So if you're not familiar with this, the cutting blade actually has lines. So it has lines on either side to show where the blade's going to be and lines in the center to show you exactly where. Can you see those lines? There you go. So these lines either side and then there. So that shows you exactly where the blade is going to cut. And there's a little arrow as well in the center that's not as easy to see. So if I line that line up, right at the start of the washi tape, so see there, that's where the blade's going to cut. And then when I slide it down, as long as I stop it when the line gets to this edge of this washi tape, I know I've cut just in the section I want. So it'll make more sense once you see it happen. So put that at 8.5. Make sure I've got my line at the 2 centimeter mark. Now keep in mind you're going through cardstock and designer series paper, so you want a little bit of pressure on there. So I'm going to go from the 2 right down to the 12.8. Okay. Now if you leave it at the 12.8, when you open it, it's where you want to start, and then flip it all the way around. Put this back at 8.5. That gives you even coverage on both sides. And because I left it at the 12.8, I can now cut up. So that's at 8.5 here. I'm starting at the 12.8, pressure on it, and slide it up to the edge of the 2. Right where the washi tape on the 2 is, okay? So that's given me cuts on both sides. Now that feels like it hasn't quite cut through there, so I'm just going to go back at the 8.5 and just give it a bit more pressure there. So that's cut through there. This side, I missed that part at the bottom as well. So if I turn that around, again, leave it at the 8.5. And I should just be able to give it that little extra cut there. So that's cut that through. Now I want my slit at the bottom. So again, you got to figure out which way around you want this to go. And I've already forgotten. I think I want it to go that way. Yeah. So that's going to be my bottom there. So once you determine your bottom, you need to turn it sideways. And now we're going to cut it at 2 centimeters from the bottom. So in this case, we're just going to cut between those two lines, and I'm going to mark it at 2 centimeters over here. So now I'm using the right hand side of my measuring tool. So I'm putting it at the 2 centimeters there, and I can see where the lines are here. So again, using those little arrows, line it up where you can see the line. So let's see. So there's the line there, and I can line it up with the cut line I have, and I'm just going to cut between those two cut lines. So making sure I've got 2 centimeters here on the end, and this will be the bottom. So when you cut it, that's got to be the bottom of where you want your designer series paper. So I'll pop it down there, and I'm just going to slide it till I get it lined up with the other cut line. And there you go. So I have cut it line to line, and now it pops out. Okay, so that's our middle section. That's all the cutting we're going to do. Now we need to do some scoring. So with this piece here, we're going to score it, and make sure you're using your scoring tool. So I find sometimes it's easier just to do the scoring at the bottom, and I don't worry about cutting by accident. So with the scoring, I'm going to do 2 centimeters, and that's the part that hasn't been cut. So this is the cutout part, the part that hasn't been cut. I'm going to pop that in to 2 centimeters, and we're going to just score. Again, we're going between those two cut lines. We only want this section to be scored. So using the lines, the scoring tool has lines as well. So using the lines there, I'm going to give it some pressure because I'm going through 2 pieces of cardstock and DSP, and I'm just going to score it between those lines. And so there's the score between the two lines. You could just take that and just use a ruler and use a scoring tool. So that's at 2 centimeters, and then we want to slide it over to 6.5 centimeters. So the top is at 6.5 centimeters, and I want to do the same thing. So using those lines on either side, line it up with your cut part, and you're just going to give it pressure to the other cut part, back and forth. And then we want to slide it over to 11 centimeters. And the same thing. So just between the cut lines. And I just do it a couple times because it's slightly thicker with the DSP there. So now I've ended up with 3 score lines. I've got one at the top where the cut line finishes, one part way down, and then one at the very bottom. Okay, so that's the scoring and the cutting done. Now we can go ahead and we want to fold up that top part and give that a good burnish. That's going to be the top of our card. And then we want to fold down the one in the center. And we'll give that a good burnish as well, so it'll fold nicely. And then the last one, we want the flap to come back up towards us. So up towards you. And give that a good burnish as well. So that's the front of our card done. And that's the mechanism that's going to be sliding up, okay? So that's why you want to have nice good burnishes there. Okay, so now we'll do a little bit of stamping. So this top part is gonna, I've got the otter there and the words there. So I'll go ahead and stamp that in the Memento Black. So I like to stamp the otter first. That way I kind of know where to put the words. And then I'll color him in with my Stampin' Blends. So I always turn over to check that the otter's sufficiently inked. And I'm just going to pop him like right about there. Good pressure straight down. And straight up. There. Isn't he cute? I think they're adorable. I actually helped clean up sea otters after the Exxon Valdez oil spill of 1987, I believe. I was living in Hawaii and I went to Alaska to help clean up after that oil spill, and I helped with the cleaning otters. So I have a close connection with sea otters. They are adorable. We had to sedate them to clean them because otherwise they'll bite you. But quite interesting. So pop that "You Are Utterly Awesome" right there. Oh, very cute. And then to finish that off, we're going to curve the edges. You could leave them straight, but they're cute if they're curved. And then, so this punch, Stampin' Up punch, or if you've got one of the old punch boards, they have corner, what do they call it? Corner rounders, that's what they're called. Okay, and then I just put a hole punch in the center so I can thread a ribbon in there. So just eyeball it. If you're particular, you can measure it out and do it in the exact spot, but I just eyeball things. There we go. And there's some new twine. The Fan Baker's twine is in the new mini catalog. It's actually in one of what I consider a masculine section. There you go, on the Hey Sports Fan page. So there it is here. And I purchased that because those colors go really well with almost anything. So on my original one, I used the green, and for this one, I'm using the blue. So just grab a piece of the cord and measure about the length that you think you need. I think I did 10 centimeters on this one originally. So, about, yep. Funny, I just eyeballed 10 centimeters, so obviously that's the measurement I want. And then, so the ends don't fray too much. I suggest you actually tie them first. I tied my ends afterwards, which was quite difficult. So if you tie your ends first, then they're not going to fray as much, and they're going to be more even. And you're probably thinking, how are you going to get it through the hole if you've tied knots in the end? Well, stay tuned, and you will find out. Okay, then I use a special tool. Most households should have them. One of the little twist ties. Okay, so take your twist tie and grab your loop that you want. Stick your loop in your twist tie. There we go. Then take your twist tie. I think this is actually two combined together. And you can stick it through the hole and bring it through. And then you can, using the twist tie, you can help to hold the loop to pop your, yep, lost the bottom one. Take the twist tie out now. So there's your loop, and then you can just pop your pieces through. Hopefully you can see this. There you go. Ta-da! So there's your tip of the day, twist tie. Actually, that was two twist ties. I thought it was a bit thick. I had two on there. So little twist tie, grab a handful, put them in your craft box to use all the time. It also helps for doing bows, fiddly bows, etc. This idea came to me because I do stitching. I do embroidery. And I have the little threading tool, which is a little wire to help you thread through the needles. And one time I thought, hey, I could do something similar there. So there, that's the inside done, except we have to color it. And then the next part, so normally we would just stick that on here and be done with it. But I'm going to put one otter on this section for the inside. Now to figure out where to stamp the otter, you're going to eyeball the inside. So this is an extra piece. If you're not going to color with blends, then don't put that there, and you're going to do the same thing where you're going to eyeball it here and use a pencil, just a light pencil, just to mark the bottom corner. Okay, so I've marked that, and then I would stamp my otter right there, color it in, so I know when I pull it up the otter will be in the right spot. That's what I did for this one here. But because I'm going to have the extra piece so the blends doesn't go through, I'm going to do the same thing but on my watercolor paper. So I want it to be roughly evenly spaced on the inside. Hold that down and do a similar thing where I'm just going to mark. In this case, I just really need the bottom edge just lightly marked. That way I know where to stamp my otter. I should do the edges as well, actually, then I know how to center him. So just a little there. So now I'm going to stamp my otter. So if you're not doing it with the Stampin' Blends, stamp your otter on this piece. This is the card piece. If you are doing it with the Stampin' Blends, stamp your otter on the watercolor paper. So again, you need to use the Memento black ink if you're using the Stampin' Blends. If you're using the pencils or the regular pens, you don't need to use this ink, but I love my Memento black ink. Works for so many different things. I always turn it over to check that I've got it inked sufficiently everywhere. And I'm just going to put them up just slightly above those lines, because I'll also be able to erase them. And just give them decent pressure. Now watercolor paper is kind of textured, so just give him a little extra pressure because he might not go through all the lines. So there he is. Okay. So if you want, you can also stamp your little otter on the inside, which I think I will do. And remember, we have this piece left over that can look like water down here. So when you stamp them on the inside, keep that in mind. Now I did the one off the side. I think I'm going to put this guy just right in the middle this time. So I want him to look like he's coming out of the water. So I want him down a bit more than I did the other guy. I'm just going to pop him just right about there. And if I color this one with Stampin' Blends, it will bleed through, but it'll bleed through on the back of the card. And not everybody looks on the back of the card. Although I do put my brand label on the back, but I'll put it on a sticker to cover that up. Okay. So now I'm going to color these with my Stampin' Blends, and then I will come back with the colored items and put it all together and show you how to put it all together so you'll have your beautiful card in the end. Okay, so I'm back from coloring. I love coloring. So I've done 4 different types of colors of otters. There we go. You can see my different otters. And as you can see, it does bleed through. So the Stampin' Blends bleed through. So when you're coloring your otters, keep in mind what you're doing. So that's the back of that one. And so that's bled through. And if I did that straight onto the card like my original one, you would be seeing that on the inside of the card. So that's why I did this extra piece. Now you could just do that on basic white, this extra piece, but I will show you why I chose the watercolor paper in a minute. So let's just, that guy I colored, and the colors I used, I will list all the products I used in the description below. So you can look at all the different Stampin' Blends colors I used. They come in packs of 2, a light and a dark. and as the name implies, you can blend them. So sometimes you can do it to create highlights like I did there. Other times, if you blend two different colors, I don't know if you can see, it almost looks like there's a bit of fur. So those are two different colors, not two shades of the same color. So it gives you that kind of furry look. And the lovely thing with blends, so even like here, is you can just keep adding colors. And if you don't like the way it looks, just keep adding colors and it just gives a different look. But one tip is use a light touch because it does bleed through. And the more colors you add, you'll get more bleed through. And don't do it too close to the edge of your image because it will bleed. Like this one I did purposely, so he has a little bit of a color on his fur on his top of his head. But it will bleed through, so you don't want to go right up to the edge like you would do with normal pens, just slightly off the edge. And we do have a color lifter pen that you can get to try to take away those colors if you've got colors in the wrong place or they've bled. But I find if they're in the wrong place and it's not a dark color, just go and add more of a different color and it kind of takes it away. So I'm just going to erase my lines here. Okay, so those lines are gone. And so for the inside, I'm just going to glue this little strip here. I think that way it probably looks better. I could just leave it, but I'm just going to do that strip. That's how I did the other one, just to add the little bit of water so it looks like he's coming out of the water. Okay, so could use a bit of tear tape there, but I'm just popping glue on to make it quick and easy. And just pop that down there. Because it doesn't reach both sides, I'm going to give a little white space below as well. Okay. So there. So that was the little scrap left over. Just used it on the inside. I'm not going to erase those lines because you're not going to see them. This otter needs to be cut out because he's going to be the one on the front. So I didn't color any of the area around him because I'm just going to fussy cut around him just as close to the black line as possible. I don't want to have white on the edges because it doesn't really go very well with my card. So he's going to lose a bit of his fluffiness on the outside edge. And that's also why I did him in the thick basic white cardstock. So he's nice and sturdy. And didn't need to do any brown on the fluff there, but sometimes when you're coloring, even though you know you don't need to color certain areas, you just can't help yourself. Because like the big one, you might not see the bottom of the standing otter, so I didn't really need to color it all the way down. But just in case somebody pulls the card that much too far, I've got myself covered. So, oh, cutting it off screen. Gotta watch what I'm doing. It's hard to cut and watch what you're doing at the same time. So, there we go. Got his little tail. Nope. There we go. So he's cut out for the front. And I just did a green fish. I don't know what color fish are. I'm not a fisher person. Okay, so that's that. Now, the reason I did the watercolor cardstock is my original card I just colored with pencil. Because I knew once to hold it up, you would see that, and depending on how far up they pull it, you shouldn't pull it, see, now you can see the whole otter. You don't really need to pull it all that far up. But I knew you'd see that, so I colored it with pencil, and I put a little watercolor on there, water on there because of the watercolor pencils. So this one, I'm going to do it with the ink pad, the Balmy Blue, and a brush. So if you squish our ink pads, you get a bit of ink. Oh, sorry, don't mean to get the camera moving. There we go. So if you squish it, you get a bit of ink in the case. And then we have our lovely water painters. They come in 3 different sizes. They have different size tips on them. And I'm going to use the wide one, and because that's why I have the watercolor paper. Now I'm just going to grab a piece of scrap. Just a bit of scrap, so if it gets too wet, I don't get it all over everything. And I'm going to brush, this is Balmy Blue, which is the color of the background DSP. And just, there's water in there already, so you unscrew it and you can put water in it, and it even says push, so you can push there to get some water to go down to the tip. And the best thing is to get a bit of water flowing. And I'm using the big one because I want to give it a certain look, and I don't want it to be too thick. So see how the water is flowing there? Okay, now I'm going to go off the top just in case I don't like the look of it. There we go. And with the watercolor paper, it won't roll up like normal paper. If you get it wet, it might roll up and ruin the paper. The watercolor paper is thicker and made for watercoloring, and it's better to go on light, and then you can add dark later on. So to get it to go on light, my tip is just having plenty of water in it when you brush it on. And so I've got some streaks going there. And I'm hoping I'm not going to destroy my picture when I get down to the bottom. We will find out. This is me trying this for the first time on camera. Hopefully it's on. Yep. We are filming. Okay. There we go. Coming down. Now the permanent ink should stay because it's not a water-based ink. The Stampin' Blends that I colored my water with. So let's come in from the bottom and see how we look. A bit more water coming out. There we go. That's a bit more water. Okay. So there we go. He's actually going to look like he's slightly wet. Try not to get too much on him, but I can go over him slightly. I'll show you in a minute how he looks. So I'm just trying to do different waves to try to make it look like the water's going around, and to give some blue background behind my water. I don't want too much water on the black ink because that's not a permanent ink, so it might run, and I think it might be running in a few spots at the moment. Okay, so just going to kind of curve, get some dark bits curving a bit. A few streaks in there. I'll show you in a minute. I'll bring it up close. Okay. Now I don't need it to be solid because like the background has a lot of white bits in it as well. So there you go. I think I'll stop there before I make it too bad. So you can see, smeared a little bit because I got some water on that ink, but I had colored those bits with the Stampin' Blends, and they seem to be fine. And so it doesn't get as bent as normal paper would. So I'll leave that to dry a bit, or I can use the heat tool to dry that off. And that's going to give me a nice little background effect. It's funny that it's balmy blue, but it almost looks more green. But when it comes up, it should look okay. So leave that to dry a bit. And we'll get everything else ready to go in the meantime. So with your white piece that's got the tab at the top and your cutout piece, you want to, this is where you want to use tear and tape. So use a bit of tear and tape at the base to stick the two pieces together. So just on that little final section that's folded, you just want the tear and tape there. and it comes out that you should be able to put 2 pieces of tear and tape on. It's good width for that. Okay, so I managed to get 2 pieces of tear and tape right there. And what you want to do is you want the base to be touching the base there. You don't want it too long. You want it just touching exactly where the lines are, or as close as possible. You don't want any white showing up. If it's too long, the white will show up and it might not sit right. Now before I do that, I just realized before I stick that down, I want to get a curve there so I can pull it out. We don't sell these circle punches anymore, but if you have one, use that. The other thing you can do is use a die. If you have a circle die, just put half the circle up the top there and run it through your die cutting machine, or you could just cut it by hand. So I'm trying to center that between the 2 cut parts, so have about an even amount on either side, and just down about halfway where the circle is. Halfway through the circle. There we go. Excuse me. And that way, when it's down, you've got room for your little pole to be there. So I might have done that slightly off center. Okay, so now we want to stick this in. So pull your tape off. And we only want that bottom part to stick down. So making sure you got your image face down, centered either side, and just right up to the edge. Okay. And you can test it before you give it complete pressure by turning it over and seeing how it sits. So I did cut my half circle slightly off, but that's okay. All right. So that's about even on both sides. So I can check up that way that it's even on both sides. Looks good. And then I can just get the pressure to push it down. All right, so that's our sliding section complete. Now we need to stick this part down. Now that should have dried, it feels dry. So that's going to be the background of our card. So if you didn't use this, you would have stamped your image there. So I'm just going to stick this down here, and I'm just going to check. Let's slide that up. If I've got my otter in the right spot, that looks good. Yeah, that will be fine. So I'm going to use tear and tape because it might still be a bit wet and the glue, liquid glue might not work. So I'm going to put tear and tape on this one. And again, you only do this part if you're going to color with blends and it's going to bleed through. Otherwise, we would have our image on there. So this is just one little extra step. And I'm just going to stick this down central. And then put the front on. My lovely nails, and they're kind of almost in the way, actually. And I think because it's a big piece in the center, I might add a piece of tape right in the center there just to hold that part down as well. What you can do, you can take your scissors to help pull up the tape. You just slide it like that at the edge. And you just slide your scissors at an angle on the edge and it'll pull it up. So if you don't have nails, or your nails are at the state where they're actually more of a bother than help. Okay, so I'm just going to put that pretty much center, because I know from those lines where the bottom of the thing is, but I'm just going to center that. There we go. So this is the part that does all the magic. So Once that's stuck on, again, go to your tear and tape, and you just want it around the edges. So just around each edge. And because of the dimensions, if you follow the dimensions I gave you, you'll have room for it to slide without any hindrance if you use tear and tape. You could use liquid glue, but then you run the risk of the glue seeping into parts that you don't want it to be, and it might hinder the movement of the card. So my suggestion is tear and tape on the 3 sides. Don't tape anything else because you don't want that to stick down. And I always do my tabs so I can center things. And then if it's not quite right, I can pull it up. So I only pull back a little bit of the tape because if it's not right, I've only stuck down corners and I can pull it back up. So this one should fit the entire front of the card. So there should be no border. And just give a gentle press in those parts that you've already pulled the tape up, just to check that it looks like you've got it. You can always turn it over and check as well. And once you're happy, then you just peel your little tab out and it will lay down the rest of the tape. There you go. So nearly done. We just need to put our otter in place. So this little otter, I'm going to put some dimensionals on him. And when you put him down, don't put the dimensionals too high. You see the ink bled through. Because when he pulls up, he's going to be sitting here. And if you put them too high, you'll see him in the back. And so you also want to angle him. So, you know, decide where you want him to sit. And then from there decide. So I want dimensional just below his face, so maybe about there. And then one near his tail. And that should be fine. Don't know, I'll just have a scrap one. Don't like to waste, so I'll just pop that guy in there. Okay. And I like to put him at an angle so it looks like he's floating on his back. With otters, now I did mine all different colors, but otters are actually very dark brown and they're all one color. They don't have a separate patch in the center, but they've done this just to make it cute and you know, interesting for. And you don't want the tail too far. The other thing is you don't want the tail beyond that bend because when it comes up it will bend the tail. So you want it above that. So you want your tail to be above that bend because when you pull it up, if your tail was further down, it would get bent. Okay, and then your head can be where you want it. So there you go. So pull it up, and you are awesome. And all we need is some bling. So the bling is a new item as well in the new catalog. This is iridescent rhinestones, basic jewels, and they kind of look pinky at first, but then they pick up whatever color you put them on. So I always like to do things in 3s, so we will pop a big bling there and a medium bling maybe here and a little bling over there. Okay, so that's the blingy bits. Again, I will list all these things on the description below, so you will be able to see what I used, and if you want to order, the codes will be there so it's easier to do. So there you go. So there's our little lovely sea otter, and I've got different colors just so they have different personalities, but sea otters are all really dark brown, kind of like that shade or this shade, but they don't have a central part. It just makes them look cute. And then our little otter popping out. And then here's our other one. This one was done with the pencils, the watercolor pencils. And this one was done with the Stampin' Blends. So I'd love to know which is your preference, which coloring option you like. I do like the blue background, but I knew I was doing a video, so I saved that for the video. So please feel free to put comments what you like, and if I gave you any good tips, I'd love to hear that. You can subscribe to my videos for future ones. Every month, myself and demonstrators around the world do a global monthly video hop. It's usually the first Wednesday of the month, or here in New Zealand, it's like 2 in the morning on Thursday because we're a day ahead of the rest of the world. And I have lots of other videos, so have a look at my YouTube channel. If there's anything you'd like me to do a video of, please let me know. I'd be happy to take on some other ideas, and I hope you enjoyed that. Have a very happy 2022, and thanks for watching. Bye!